Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, in conjunction, once again, with, of course, Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, the home of African Center News and Information. Back once again. Guess who's back? As you all know, I've been out of these YouTube streets for quite a while now, unfortunately. As you know, we try to stay consistent, at least with the daily Black History Facts, today's Black History Facts. And to mention that, as you all may know, today is the birthday of the incomparable, true Renaissance man, Paul Robeson. Right? If you don't know who Paul Robeson is, make sure that you check out that brother. Of course, he was, of course, a All-American athlete, football player at Rutgers University. He was actually the only black student at Rutgers University when he attended. Got a law degree, if I remember correctly, from Columbia University. He was an actor, Broadway actor, uh, but also he became an activist who was blacklisted during the McCarthy era due to the Red Scare. But so once again, just in terms of today's Black history, we want to make sure that we're honoring, of course, Paul Robeson, who was truly a Renaissance man. Matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes from Paul Robeson is he stated that of all of his endeavors, of course, his primary goal was to be African. And of course, he taught us that the front is everywhere. There is no shelter to the rear. Appreciate you, brother LMJ. Appreciate you 100%. If you're watching, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Make sure that you are a blessing to the show via, of course, Cash App, Venmo, and of course PayPal. You can always hit the super chat. You can always, always, always hit the super chat. So once again, family, we have been out of the game for quite some time. This is what we call life is life, and many of you may be aware, some of you may be unaware, but I'm no longer the director at the MLK Center at Sacramento State University. I left that position for reasons that will remain personal, but we hope to bring an update in terms of where I'll be transitioning to rather soon. But kind of enjoying the time off right now. Been doing some writing, things of that nature, a little traveling here and there. I think you all saw the picture where I was able to, have a personal colloquy with, of course, the man, the myth, the legend. Your favorite favorite historian, of course, your favorite Pan Africanist, Dwayne Omawale. I was able to take a brief visit down to Florida to finally connect and be in community with him in person. And so just definitely for that. But once again, family, the link is in the description. I'll put the link in the chat momentarily. But before we, of course, get started, and there's a lot that we need to cover or talk about. That's why I just said, hey, let's talk. Really, we're going to open up to whatever anyone wants to discuss. But number one, of course, family, as you know, diversity of thought is welcome. Right, you could be on the left, you can be right. On the right, you could be right down the middle, you could be independent. But we welcome that. We know that one of the ways that you grow intellectually is by engaging in the community in which there is an equal exchange of thoughts. We don't believe in operating in an echo chamber. Number two, family, no racial epithets, no epithets of any kind. As you all know, this is a space of Black empowerment. And so we do not believe in using dehumanizing and, of course, self-defeating language in any way, shape, or form. Number three, family, facts over feelings. We want you to attack the argument, not the person. And then number four, of course, no fundamentally false statements, right? And we always give the example. You can claim that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player ever. But if you were to claim he was the greatest basketball player ever because Michael Jordan only won 3 championships, that would be a claim that, of course, is adverse to facts. And of course, last but not least, family, our mission is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to challenge conventional wisdom or re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So what I'm going to do now, family, is I'm going to put the link in the chat, and we really want to get the conversation started. So the link is in the chat, the link is in the description. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you all. Really, this is an open forum this evening where we're looking really just to have a conversation about issues pertinent to, of course, the Black and African world. As I said before, we've been out of the game, out of rotation for quite some time. But one of the benefits is, of course, just really taking time to myself, doing some things I need to do in the back end. We're writing the book right now. Definitely want to be able to get that information out to you all in due time when we're finished with that. But also, we want to make sure that even though we weren't going live, we still were posting. And of course, what's most important to me and near and dear to my heart is, of course, are our daily Black history facts. So we always want to make sure that we're informing, that we're educating, and definitely very happy that we were able to do that, to be consistent with that. And many of you, of course, we get a lot of views. Many of you have liked that content. So we will make sure that we're continuing to do that. But once again, family, the link is in the description, the link is in the chat. And of course, you can always be a blessing to the show, Venmo, Cash App, and of course, via the super chat. Of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com in conjunction with Bequaline Network. We are back. Let's have a conversation um, on a variety of issues. I will start off. I was having a conversation with my mother this morning regarding, of course, President Trump. My mother stated that, why is he doing the things that he's doing? She said that he was a thief and a liar. And I said, well, mother, I would argue every president is a thief and a liar. And she said, but I don't know about that. I explained to her that, unfortunately, America's foreign policy strategy or perspective is imperialism. And so we went all the way back to, of course, the Monroe Doctrine. If many of you are familiar with the Monroe Doctrine, that was a doctrine that was coined by, of course, then President James Monroe in 1823, if I remember correctly, that discussed, basically telling Europe to have a hands-off policy in the Western Hemisphere, and that the Western Hemisphere will be left to the machinations of American imperialism. And so I would argue that since that time, officially, America's foreign policy has been rooted in imperialism, and thus every subsequent president since then has been, of course, a finagler. We don't have to use the term liar, finagler, and then, of course, more importantly, a thief, right? We were talking about the extraction of natural resources from, of course, nations who unfortunately are nations of color, who unfortunately do not have the capacity oftentimes to defend themselves against the historical impetus of U.S. or Western military. So once again, family, this is one of the things that we discussed and talked about. But definitely would love to hear from you all. Once again, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. The link is in the description, family. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you all regarding what is pertinent, what is pressing. Many of you may be aware of even the article that I wrote regarding my visit to a church in, of course, Central Florida. We may even talk about that if you all had the privilege of reading the article. So I talked about, I went to church for the first time in nearly 2 decades, and why I'm never going back. So definitely want to hear from you all, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. We once again do want to apologize for being out of circulation, out of the game for quite some time. We know that typically by this time, Mr. Sandman would have tapped in, of course, from the Illidale 215. But we also know that brothers and sisters on the continent in the UK, it's probably rather early morning, probably around 1. And we do know that we have some affiliates on the West Coast who is only around 6. But definitely just want to hear some thoughts from you all regarding issues pertinent to the Black community. I read an article today stating that African Bambaataa died, one of the founders and founding forefathers of course, hip hop. If you don't know who African Bambaataa is, shame on you if you are supposed to be a hip hop head or hip hop aficionado, but definitely check him out. We may at least provide an obituary for African Bambaataa. We also know that Diddy is back in courts. P. Diddy, Puffy, P. Diddy Papa, whatever he goes by nowadays. Where his attorneys are averring that his case should either be, his conviction should be overturned, or at the very least his sentence be reduced, right? There are varying opinions on Diddy's guilt. I followed the trial rather closely with some of our colleagues. Excuse me. And there's still mixed opinions, but I don't think he should be incarcerated based on the evidence that was presented during the trial. I would argue that in the lead up to the trial, particularly when we talk about documentaries, even the press conference led by the U.S. Attorney, I thought the man was an absolute devil, a demon, and I believe that he should have been convicted based on the press conference. But the evidence was completely different. I recall vividly that the one of the things that was stated in the press conference by the district attorney of the Southern District of New York was that he was actually engaging in sex trafficking of minors. So my thought right away was, oh, you could lock this guy up and throw away the key. And then, of course, during the trial, there was no evidence uh, presented to even infer that that was taking place. So they may have been looking to win the case through the court of public opinion rather than the court of law. Unfortunate, but we will see what happens. But once again, family, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Would love to hear from you all. LMA, want to hear from you, brother. If you could tap in, be part of the conversation. We know that we've been out for quite some time, but we do apologize for that. But we try to stay consistent at the very least with the, of course, um, daily Black history facts, so that we were still engaging our subscribers. But as you know, sometimes you can't control life when life is lifing. But once again, tap in, family. The link's in the description, link is in the chat. Definitely want to hear from you all. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, you can follow us on YouTube at Lumumba Speaks. And definitely want to hear from you all in terms of Iran, as our brother from VA would always say, is it real? Right. I think there's a number of issues that we need to, of course, discuss. We know that there are still issues, even internally in the Black community, with Yvette Cornell and, of course, ADOS, FBA. There are a myriad of issues that I think we can discuss. But also, as you all know, the goal is always to have an intellectually incisive conversation so that we are able to leave with an understanding and, of course, action-oriented, intellectually incisive conversation so we can make decisions to better our lives on a diurnal and, of course, yearly and generational basis. LMA, what's the word, brother? Can you hear me? All right. Can't hear you, so I don't know if you're having some issues, but can you hear me, brother LMA? Okay, so you may need to step out of the queue and then step back in, because we're having some technical difficulties. Can't hear you. I don't know if you're trying to speak or not, but let me see if I mute you, and then if you could unmute yourself. So I just muted your mic. So I'm gonna unmute you and see if something happens now. Can you hear me, brother? Okay, so you muted yourself, so I take it you're trying to square things away on your end. So once again, family, if you're watching, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Okay, so you said that you don't hear anything. Interesting. Okay. So let's see here. Let me see if I can. There's something going on here. Okay, yeah. So that may be on your end. So yeah, hopefully you can log back in and we can get you squared away. But I think that was an issue on your end of regarding you not being able to hear me. But definitely want to hear from you all, family. Once again, we do apologize for being out of the game for quite a while. But as I said it before, we try to stay engaged by putting up posts, pictures, things of that nature. And then, of course, most important, the Daily Black History Facts. As I said it before, today is Paul Robeson's birthday. African American, All-American athlete at Rutgers University in college. Could have went to the NFL. I think he did play in the NFL, to be quite honest. But of course, he was the only Black student at Rutgers, which is the State University of New Jersey. He was born in Princeton, New Jersey, on this day in 1898. Of course, true African Renaissance man. Of course, he was one of the leading members of Black conscious individuals, particularly in the mid 20th century. He was blacklisted due to the McCarthy era of course, the Red Scare. So definitely tap in. Of course, they confiscated his passport, unfortunately, and he wasn't able to travel. We know the same was done with Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois, at one point as well. So, but definitely tap in, family. Want to hear from you all regarding what's been going on in the Black world, and just really want to re-engage with our audience. Like I said before, we truly are remorseful, sorry for not being engaging. I know I got some questions at times. Say, when are you going to start to re-engage and repost and go live, so on and so forth. Um, but like I said it before, life is life sometimes, and so we have to take a step back. But we're definitely appreciative for everyone who is still an active subscriber. LMA, hopefully you were able to get your uh, technical issues squared away, and we would love for you to hop back in. But looking to have a conversation regarding the contemporary Black world, right? This is April 9th, 2026. We're about a little over a quarter, almost a quarter into the year. Hopefully everyone's having a great 2026, and looking forward to um, hearing from you all and your thoughts. Particularly, I would argue we need to take a look at what's going on in Nigeria. We know the Trump administration has been rather testorical, bellicose militarily. We know they changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War, really going on the defensive and looking to, excuse me, promote what I would argue American military might as a form of gun.
Hey, Dr. Lumumba, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you just fine. I hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Test.
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
There we go.
Okay, so we're still having some issues on his end. I don't think he's able to hear me, but I was able to hear him. So, Brother LMA, who dribbles down in VA, hopefully we're able to get him back in, because he's always he's a great contributor, consistent contributor, provides some great political, social, and even economic insights, if I can remember correctly. But LMA, former military vet such as myself, who shared that he at one point was on what he calls the conservative train. He was a Black conservative, and we find this tends to happen oftentimes. You know, if you're in the military, it's a very conservative environment. You tend to be cared for pretty well, you can argue, socially, economically. And so that's something that is understandable. We know, and oftentimes when Black people become disenchanted with the Democratic Party, as we know, there's an expectation that they get the vote. They provide very few tangibles, if any, in return. That one will look to the other political party. However, as we have always consistently averred, is that when one becomes truly conscious, they look at things from a Black or African centered perspective, and they realize that both political parties, of course, are white supremacist organizations that have a long and virulent history of anti-Black discrimination. So, but definitely hopefully we could hear back from Brother LMA. You know, quick question, Brother LMA, or suggestion. You may want to try your phone. I don't know if you're on a laptop. You may be having trouble with your laptop, but we could try your phone. Let's see how that works for you. I know sometimes I use my phone. However, I do know in the past when I would use my phone for StreamYard, there will be times where my phone would overheat. So I don't know which what kind of device you have, if you have a Samsung, if you have an Android, if you have an Apple, but just something to, of course, consider. Brother LMA, what's the word? What's the word, brother? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so I hear some noise in the background. I don't know if you're still trying to cipher through your technical issues. Peace in here, Dubs 9 Ball. What's the word? Haven't seen you before. You could tap in, let us know, at least put in the chat where you're from, how old you are, and how did you come across the channel? What brings you here? That'd be greatly appreciated. Once again, family, we're back. This is our first live broadcast. I would argue maybe since maybe November. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's been maybe about 5 months. We really, haven't gone live in quite some time. But we're back, and we just looking to have a conversation about issues pertinent to, of course, our viewers, pertinent to the African world. There's a lot going on in the world right now. We could talk about the war in Iran, which is a tentatively at the ceasefire. We could talk about the effect that the war has, of course, on African people. We know a lot of this has to deal with oil. Um, we know, sorry, Doc, having trouble with my setup. Understood. I understand completely. We've had that issue before. Take your time, brother. Just hope that you're able to tap in. Like I said before, you may want to consider using your phone. I've done that before when I was having issues with my laptop. From Iowa, okay, born in Chicago. Shout out to the Shy. I'm gonna call it the Shy rather than Chirac. We're gonna stay positive here. 30 years old. Tap in because you're a Pan African. Appreciate that, brother. If you want, you could tap in. You could hit the link that's in the description or in the chat. Be part of the conversation. We'd love to learn uh, what led you to becoming a Pan African. So you can share with us your Pan African journey. I would love to hear that. Would love to hear that. Love to hear that. And then, of course, how did you find out about the channel? So you said you're here because you're a Pan Africanist, which is great. But how did you find out about the channel? As you all know, we work in conjunction with Beacon Network, which, of course, is the Pan African social media extraordinaire and the home of African-centered news and information. So once again, family, if you're watching, the thumbs up button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you can be a blessing to the show, of course, via Venmo, Cash App, and the Super Chat. So definitely looking forward to hearing from you all regarding a myriad of issues that, of course, affect the African world. As I said it before, and I think I discussed this when my first trip, truly reinforced to me that the work that we do has to be addressed to address the material needs of our people. Some of that is going to come from just African people, Black people being philanthropic, right? Supporting causes and initiatives that address those issues. But that tends to only address the symptoms of the problem, right? But we have to look at developing programming, structural structures, even policy that addresses structural barriers to, of course, black empowerment, particularly materially, right? I think one of the major issues I have a concern with, and this may be the case for many of you all, is how do we improve the quality of life of African people, not only here in America, but in the Caribbean, South America, and on the continent, even in Europe as well, wherever we lay our heads. Been any of you that have had the pleasure or the privilege to travel to Africa, as we know, it's a cultural hajj for many of us. It could be a very emotional experience. We know some of you all may have seen situations where brothers and sisters get off the plane and they begin to emote rather visibly, which is understandable. But when you actually begin to travel, you see that there are luxury high rises. You may see individuals in mansions, driving expensive vehicles, but not everyone is living that way. And that's the case here in the States as well. But Dubs, if you could simply turn your phone on in queue, your video on in queue, that way I just can ensure that you're not trolling. Then of course you could turn your camera off and I could bring you into the live. So if you could turn your camera on while you're in queue, okay, very good. Appreciate you. I will bring you into the live. That one of the issues that we find is how do we address improving the quality of life of African people, particularly materially. Brother Dubs, what's the word?
Not much, man. Just chilling. How are you? What's the word?
I'm doing quite all right. Now, you say you're from Chicago. I was in Chicago a week ago. What part of Chicago are you from? Are you from the suburbs? Are you from the city? Are you from the west side, K-Town, south side? What's the word?
Okay. See, I'm from Iowa. I was born in Chicago. My family's from Chicago, but they're from Garfield Park.
Okay.
My whole family went to Marshall High School. My dad went to there. I'm not sure if you know about that. But I got family in what they call L-Town. If you heard about that.
Okay.
But yeah. Yep.
And so what part of Iowa are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in Eastern Iowa.
Okay, so most of us, all we know is Des Moines, right?
That's true. That's the capital. That's the middle. But I'm in Eastern Iowa, so like Quad Cities area. My brother lives in Cedar Rapids.
Okay. Yes. Yes, I'm familiar with the Quad Cities area. Because there are a number of cities that borders with, if I remember correctly, because I do know a lot of athletes come out of that area.
Yep. So like let me see here. So like Bria Bill, she was a women's basketball player. She's from Rock Island.
Okay.
Uh, Jason Randall's from Rock Island.
Okay.
Um, Ricky Davis, he played in the NBA. He was from Downport, Iowa.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, some athletes now.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
So let me ask you this: how did you come to gain knowledge of the platform or the channel?
uh, I'll be on YouTube a lot,
Okay.
and I'll be searching in Pan African in the search title, and so I think I came across the channel now.
Okay. Very good. So, is there anything on your mind that you would like to discuss regarding issues that affect positively or negatively the Black people in the African world?
Uh, well, I just was. It was interesting. You said you hadn't gone to church in 20 years.
Yes.
What was the what was the reason for that? Because
Well,
I'm off church as well. So
yeah, yeah. Well, that question. Maybe I may have to do a show regarding the article that I wrote, even though it may
okay.
upset some people. So yeah, so I went. So I keep it close. I keep it close to the vest because I don't want to give things away. But so I haven't been in church in 20 years. Reasons. One, I'm an atheist, right? So that's the first reason. The second is, once I left my parents' home and I began to educate myself, study, so on and so forth. I came across a lot of information that was able to show me not only that Christianity was a religion that was forced upon us during the Holocaust of enslavement, but that is Christianity as well as Islam and Judaism, all Abrahamic religions have a long and a very virulent um, practice of anti-black racism, right? And so as a result, if I was to ever practice a religion, which of course I wouldn't because I'm an atheist, it would never be Abrahamic faith.
Well said.
Yeah. So those are the reasons why I never. That's why I left, and really never went back. I said the second issue is that, and you know this, what you tend to find is a lot of psychological manipulation. I had a
Mm,
conversation with my cousin the other day. He told me he was at a restaurant eating, and he had a situation in which these white men came up, began trying to proselytize, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not interested. I'm not a Christian." And they try to force their beliefs on. So we see a level of bullying, religious chauvinism, um, and but then the other issue is oftentimes even when if you're in at a service, there's a level of self-loathing that takes place, right? The deference, racial deference to, of course, Jewish people as the believed to be the, of course, chosen people of God or the Abrahamic God. We could argue that oftentimes and I even talked about this in the article that I wrote, oftentimes um, the message of is racially disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive, right? When you're reading the Bible, you're going to Bible study, Sunday school, it promotes miseducation, where you're learning about the values, culture, and ethos and mythology of a non-black group of people, and you're not learning about the values, culture, ethos, and mythology of what your ancestors, your heritage, your culture. So there's an innumerable amount of problems that we find arise as a result of our adherence to Abrahamic religions.
um, thank you. I feel the same way, man. I'm actually an atheist myself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Shout
I
out to Carlos Cooks. We know there are a large amount of Pan Africanists, right, who have the different religious background. But most people don't know that Carlos Cooks, who was, of course, the progenitor of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement and was considered the ideological son of Marcus Garvey, was a Pan Africanist who was also an atheist.
mm, yeah, man,
So yeah,
I think
you said that you're an atheist as well.
yeah, for sure. I think religion is detrimental, man. Like by and large, especially Muslim and Christianity. But
Yeah.
then there's a lot of things. Just it's a lot. But so I try not to, because I know church people. I got family
Right,
members that's they Christian, but so
right,
it get touchy. But
right. Yeah, when you have these type of conversations with people, and as you know, as well as I, you're dealing with people who are uh, very emotional. Oftentimes, these are individuals who associate excess emotionalism with spirituality. Typically, don't do much research. As my cousin said, the people who read the least debate the most, right? um, And so, as a result, when you try to have these conversations with individuals, cognitive dissonance sets in, and we find oftentimes our brothers and sisters becoming extremely um, emotional, right? And their responses, and really we're looking at the visceral emotional responses due to, of course, you challenging them. Because as you and you know this, brother, I mean, I'm quite sure you grew up in some way, shape, or form, being in a community of close proximity to the church, is you're taught not to question anything. Matter of fact, you're socialized to not question. You're socialized not to question, not to think, simply to believe. And oftentimes you're socialized to believe in something that you don't even understand. To believe in things that are actually nonsensical, right? And so that brings about, unfortunately, this high level of emotionalism when you are seeking to have intellectually engaging conversations in which one is presenting factual information rather than belief or, of course, religious fairy tales.
that's true. That's what it is. It makes you docile.
Well, yeah, a lot of people say that. My cousin says that all the time, that it really makes you docile. Yeah.
Does.
And the thing is it's not like what you're saying is adverse to facts. We know there's a large amount of scholarly literature on, of course, the Christian conversion process during the Holocaust of enslavement. And of course, I'm quoting Dr. Malana Karinga in his seminal text, Introduction to Black Studies, fourth edition, where he states that the enslavers found that though our ancestors who converted to Christianity were the most docile, keyword docile, and amenable to the institution of enslavement, and those who that resisted and obtained and retained their African cultural identity and religious beliefs were the ones who were most adverse to the Holocaust of enslavement.
Agreed.
Yeah, so there's actual scholarship to substantiate what you're saying. Frederick Douglass talks about this in his memoir. Phyllis Wheatley in her posthumous autobiography, right? So there's a large amount of scholarly literature by African people in the New World who adverse what you just said. So it's not based on how you feel; it's based on facts, right? So just the reality of the situation.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and so we know oftentimes, I even recall when I was teaching at Columbus State, teaching African American history, of course, and the young lady stated, well, Jesus is black. And I said, well, there's no evidence to substantiate that. And of course, we went into, of course, the Bible. And when I broke everything down, because I said that what you're attempting to argue is that Christianity is an African religion. And I said, anyone who studied African religions will know that it is not. So I had to, basically go down um, notch by notch on the differences between traditional African religions, classical, legal, and contemporary, and of course Christianity and Abrahamic religion show the differences, right, and how they, of course, are antithetical to each other. And I remember the young lady just was extremely upset, and she dropped the class, and it made me think of something that, but of course, the our resident historian Dwayne Omawale. Uh, One of the things he would always state, he would quote Chancellor Williams in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, in which Chancellor Williams stated that when Black people don't know their own history, they would try to Blackanize or Africanize someone else's history and culture. So since we don't typically know our own history, heritage, or culture, we try to make what we do know, which of course is the Bible and the Quran, somehow be Black when it's not.
Yes, man. Jesus was the central thing in making me leave religion, man, because I realized that is a mythical character, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's a lot of a lot of scholars make that argument that Jesus is a mythological figure. We also know that Jewish scholars have admitted that Abraham, which is supposed to be the patriarch of Jewish people is a mythological figure that never actually existed.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but what we do know is when we talk about our classical African ancestors, they actually did exist, and we can show you where they're buried, right?
That's for sure.
So
I tell people that. I
yeah,
reference that a lot.
yeah. And we can show you where they're buried. This actually happened. It actually transpired. So it's unfortunate that, but we know this is why education is so important. That we have to counteract the miseducation machine, or the arguments that are oftentimes perceived when I criticize religion. The argument is that, of course, religious institutions um, do more work than people who claim to be conscious of Pan Africanists. And there may be some truth to that, but I said you also have to, I think it's a disingenuous argument because churches have a institutional, of course, benefit. They have an institutional benefit, right? Institutionally, they're able to have a leg up on Pan African individuals because they have doting parishioners who are going to show up every week and give them money no matter what,
Mm.
right? For example, there are documented cases to substantiate what I'm about to say. We have documented cases of pastors sleeping with teenage girls in the congregation, impregnating the young ladies, right? And the parishioners still come and give them money. We have
Mm.
documented cases of ministers having affairs with multiple women in the church, and they still show up and do what? Give them money. We have documented cases of ministers, pastors, sex trafficking underage girls, and guess what? People still show up and give them money, right? So what we find here is that they have almost a built-in advantage because they're going to have people come. They already have a brick and mortar institution, right? And people have already, been really brainwashed to show up. And all you have to do is tell them what they want to hear. They're going to give you money. When you talk about being in Black Pan African spaces or Black consciousness spaces, there tends to be a focus on character, on a person being principled. And if a person is engaging in behavior that is incongruent with the value we would believe as a community is beneficial for our upward mobility as a people, or our racial uplift, what happens? We typically what? We ghost that mofo, right? Am I right or wrong, Brother Dubs?
Right.
Right. So I said there's some differences here. They have a built-in advantage. People are going to show up and give their money no matter what you say or do. So it's easy to get things done. Something to consider. Brother Sandman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What's the word?
Hey, what's the word?
I'm doing quite all right, brother. Long time no see. I do apologize for being out the game, but we're back right now.
Yeah. You I heard you got married and
Yes,
a
sir.
lot of things have happened. You're still
Yes,
like teaching students in college as well, right?
So that's something I mentioned early on in the broadcast. I'm no longer at CSU Sacramento, but we got I had to step away for some reasons that remain unspoken. But we're looking to have an update within a month in terms of what's my next move and where I'll be headed.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
But with that being said, I've been doing some writing, and I'm currently writing a book about 60% done, titled Pan Africanism: A Critical Reintroduction from the Middle Passage to Marcus Garvey. And what we're doing is we're looking to provide a new dimension to the historiography of Pan Africanism, in which I advert that the origins of Pan Africanism did not begin when African people disembarked in the New World. I argue that the origins of Pan Africanism began during the maritime crucible of the Middle Passage via shipboard insurrections.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like it's going to be a good read. I like the way you put together your words when you do write. I think it'll be an interesting biography to read, or it's not going to be a biography, I suppose.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but yeah, I look forward to it. Is writing books, is that lucrative business?
Well, so here's the thing. So this is actually a rather intellectually dense book that I'm writing, right? And so, of course, I've published on Amazon before, but I said, okay, I'm looking to go through a publisher right now. I'm looking to work with University of Illinois Press, right? That way, I'm putting a lot of course, intellectual energy into the book. And if I go through a press, I can actually get an agreement. It'll be lucrative, and then people will actually know about it and read it. Because University of Illinois Press, they have two uh, um, divisions that is pertinent to my book. One is black. They have the Black internationalism. Then the second is the New Black Studies series. So I'm hoping that my book will be applicable to one of those two series, and then they will pick it up, and then we'll be able to formulate an agreement, and then of course be able to sell the book.
Oh yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I'd be interested in reading that stuff. Hoping you in a local bookstore pretty soon, or can read your books on Amazon or what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like a lot of those biographies about Black history, particularly that guy. I think his name Ryan Coogler. He's
Yeah.
supposed to be doing a biography, sort of speak about Mansa Musa and the
I
Mali
heard
Kingdom
about that.
recently.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
about that.
I look forward to uh watching that if they're able to put that project together. But even something that would be just as um interesting would be a biography about you said you didn't say Frederick Douglass, you said Marcus Garvey, correct?
Yes, yes. From the Middle Passage to Marcus Garvey. Yes.
Yeah, you don't do playwrights, you just do like more intellectual stuff, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, I look forward to engaging in that, and you know, yeah, I consider myself into that type of historical knowledge as well.
Absolutely.
But and yeah, I heard you talking about Christianity, I mean, or religion, or Abrahamic religions, and this might even sound like a little far out, right?
Okay.
But you say you're a atheist, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you was this and you believe in like modern like scientific theories and things of that nature, right? So what do you think is more likely, that the entire universe, everything that we see around us, started from a big bang or a point and materialized into this entire universe that we see today with billions upon trillions of stars and planets all throughout the universe, or a god created it?
So, I think that's a great question, Mr. Sandman. And Brother Dubs, I hope you could tap in as well. And LMA, I know you're having some trouble with your setup. I would push maybe try your cell phone. I hope you could tap in. And where the sisters at as well. We talk about this all the time. Pan-Africanism, we don't have a history of sexism in the Pan-Africanist movement. We don't want to practice that there, here now. So there are sisters here. Tap in as well. Be part of the combo. So I would say this, Mr. Sandman. I have 2 points I want to make to your question. I think it's a great question, by the way. All cultures and religions have mythological origin stories, right? Unfortunately, because of the miseducation that we face, we tend to only learn about the mythological origin stories that derive from Abrahamic religions, not from African mythology and culture. The second issue is, for me as an atheist, I don't have a care concern about how the world or universe was formed. And the reason why is because it doesn't help me put clothes on my back, or food on the table, or a roof over my or my children's head.
Oh yeah, I understand. So you take like a pragmatic approach to, the life that we're given, and you take control of what you can see,
Yeah.
in front of you, as
Yes.
opposed to like believing in some type of metaphysical approach to
Yes, sir.
a philosophical thought process that people try to engage in and try to understand the vastness of the universe, when obviously is too in depth for the human mind to comprehend anyway.
Well, I think something key that you said was, focusing on what's in front of me. And what we do know is that in the 2025 college football season, what was in front of us was Penn State. And for the 9th straight year, we dog walked the Nittany Lions. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
yes, that's fire. Ain't nothing changed. But
yeah,
9 years in a row, we've dog walked y'all.
yeah,
9. And I
yeah. But yeah,
told you, and I know this is a brief segue, but the Dubs, give us 1 second. Brief segue, a brief pivot. I told you James Franklin was not him. I told you he was not one of one.
yeah, you was right. I had predicted before I had tapped in that you were going to, bring this up like way before you did, and I actually like fell into the trap. I didn't see it
Yeah.
coming. You hit me from,
Well,
you hit me with
and
the
I'm
right
gonna use
cross. I ain't see it coming.
right. I'm gonna use the language of our children's generation. Is Penn State is not giving, right? but it
Yeah.
does. Go ahead if you would like to answer Brother Sandman's question.
Oh, that's because I'll be on an app called Clubhouse, and that's usually the first people say like the creation story. They say, how was the world created? How did the first man come about? And I usually answer it the way you did. I say it's usually like a creation story. That's what it is. Like you look at ancient cultures, it's just a story. And then the second my response would be like, sometimes that's not really like important. So I think it's something to explore, but sometimes it's like it's not really in the present day. It's something that's not should be emphasized, to be honest.
Hmm. So let me ask you this, and just as a follow up, and that's a great question, Mr. Sandman. You said you don't think it should be emphasized. Gotcha. What should be emphasized?
Uh, to me or Mr. Sandman?
To you, Mr. Brother
To me,
Dubs. Yes, sir.
to me, what should be emphasized? How can we make the world better for African people? The progress of African people.
So, and
Something that's benefit. Go ahead.
that's a great. I like the answer, and I'm asking these questions because I'm curious, not because I'm trying to aha you. How do we go about doing that in a tangible manner, starting as an individual? And the reason why I ask that question is, Mr. Sandman knows me. I am a Pan African. I've been one for over 20 years, and when I find myself, and you all may be able to speak to this, you find very few institutions. There are a lot of institutions in Black community, but very few institutions that are Pan Africans in nature. And so when you're doing things to try to better our people community, we tend to find ourselves almost sporadically engaging in programs and initiatives to help our people. But it's been difficult for me, maybe because I'm in the Midwest, to find consistent programming or organizations or institutions that do that type of work.
First, I think you have to educate yourself and learn about certain things. But I'm also in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So I think it starts like as an individual, and then you take it from there. But um, sometimes, like with people, it's like a limited resources. I think you have to kind of group together. And I've actually heard people question Pan Africanism because of that. They say like it only exists in America, and it is really a hard thing sometimes to like to try to get it off the ground. If you get what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Yeah,
This is true. And, I mean, we know that, of course, that's not true. It doesn't only exist in America, as we are aware. We are well aware that Pan Africanism began actually in the Caribbean. Of
that's
course, it was
true.
coined by, of course, the Trinidadian barrister Henry Sylvester Williams. We know Trinidad and Tobago has provided more heavyweight Pan Africanists than any country in the world, pound for pound, right, with per capita. So definitely want to give a shout out to Trinidad and Tobago. Um, Claudia Jones, of course, is one of the prominent Pan Africans from Trinidad and Tobago. C.L.R. James, George Patmore, and of course Kwame Ture, who of course before was known as Stokely Carmichael. So we know that that is not a claim that, of course, is true. But individuals who once again are naysayers or adversaries to Pan Africanism make that claim. But at LMA, are we squared away on your end from a technological frame of reference? Okay, then maybe we are not. Okay, so hopefully we could get Brother Sandman back in. LMA, are you good to go? Okay, I'm going to mute your mic and then unmute you. Brother LMA, can you hear me? from the LMA. It's from the VA. Okay, yeah, we're still getting some feedback. We can't hear you clearly. Yeah, we can't really hear you. We can't make out what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know if are you using your cell phone? Send me a message on the private chat. Yeah, we could try that. Yeah. So let me ask you all this question, and I think I won't get the answer because you all are pragmatists. Should we work with so we know that churches, of course, promote self-loathing, racial deference, and miseducation. But should we work with Abrahamic religious institutions if they're willing to do the work to better the lives of African people materially?
Yeah, I believe that would be worth our while. I mean, particularly just out of our respect for our elders that do believe in, those things. And if those are their wishes, then I don't see any problem in honoring some of their wishes, you know. As long as, I mean, if their intentions are good and they also want to, promote, the positive development of Black people, in the diaspora and on the continent.
Okay. What say you, Brother Dubs?
I agree with that. I think we can work with them. I think for me, it would have to be like a slow process in terms of trying to get them to come to Pan Africanism and be logical with it, but and try to de-emphasize religion as much as you can possibly, but um, that would be a process, So I wouldn't just say, don't work with religious people, no, or church people. But as you know, in Africa, they are religious as well with Muslims and
Extremely.
Christians. So
I
that's
was in
right. So I
Ghana
could
for my wedding.
go
I
ahead.
went, this shit crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Nah, that's true. They're actually more religious. The Muslim,
Yeah,
they're like, man, that's a. So I tell people like I could never go to one of them countries if they Muslim or Christian and be like, don't be a Muslim, don't be a Christian. That won't work. That wouldn't be
right,
beneficial the
exactly.
way to do it.
Not realistic,
You
yeah.
see, that's right. In fact, I would actually have to, like to a degree, like kind of up religion before I, go with what I'm going with. But man, that'll be a process.
Absolutely.
That's what I'll come to that conclusion.
But LMA, are we
Hey,
good to go?
Dr. Lumumba, can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Man, see what happens when you leave for like 5 months, man. StreamYard goes crazy.
Right. My apologies, brother.
It's all good, man. Yeah. I was listening to your conversation. I caught maybe like the tail end of it. About, I guess you were talking about your going to that church for the first time in like 20 years and your experience with that.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it.
Okay, yeah. I'm similar. I haven't probably, I haven't been in a church in a while. Got the same feelings as you. So, yeah. I mean, unless someone close to me, and I go to like a church for like a funeral or maybe a wedding, but like just as a regular Sunday, I got other things I would just spend my time with.
Right. So, just to speak to, the religious aspect for the Dubs is talking
Oh shit! What the
Come
on, bro?
So of course my wife is Ghanaian. Can you believe it? But Dr. Lumumba was married, right? So we're having a ceremony, and my wife, her uncle is a preacher. So she told me, like, man, look, this was gonna happen. We're gonna have the ceremony. He's gonna jump up and just start preaching. That's exactly what happened, right? So she squeezed my hand, started smiling, like, don't spaz out. So he comes up to me and says, hey, Lumumba, I want you to step forward, get on your knees, raise your hands, and repeat after me. I said, I'm not doing that. So I'm not doing that. So when I'm not into that too, I don't know you. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
Right. But the indoctrination was even worse on the continent than it was here in the States. It really blew my mind. Really blew my mind. And then, there's another brother who he's a trainer at the gym that I used to go to until I found a better gym. There's a gym I go to now here in the Greater Dayton area. The dumbbells go up to 200. So now I'm really playing with some baby, some baby weight, right? But the brother had told me he was in Kenya, and one of the things he noticed is, unfortunately, oftentimes us in the diaspora, we tend to have oftentimes a better understanding of knowledge of the history, culture of our people because of the access we have to information.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And though oftentimes if you are in a country that is repressive and authoritarian, the number one thing that those in power do not want you to have is access to information.
Yep.
Right. So we've seen situations, and Sister Farida, we're still trying to work with her to get her on the platform, but I'm able to, be in community with her via, of course, WhatsApp. She, of course, is from Togo. She talked about the Togolese government, which is being ran by the dictator. This is why, I support the Forward Must Go movement. They're burning books. Right. And we ain't talking about the Council of Nicaea in 325, right? Because it's about what? Preventing people from having access to information. So we're in a privileged position being here in the West, particularly here in the United States, right? Which comes with a whole lot of mess, but we're in a privileged position to take that information and want to disseminate that to the world and give this information, and hopefully our people can make better decisions in their lives with the information that we're able to provide.
Yeah, I mean that exactly. That's a privilege of living in the West, and when you're not a hunter gatherer or you're not a farmer, you have the majority of your time in the day to as you're at your leisure. When you don't have to tend to animals, or you don't have to slaughter your own animals for food. You don't have to tend to your own farm for grazing your own crops and stuff like that. So, here in the West, we have the opportunity to, spend an hour, 2 hours, three or more in reading or whatever endeavor that we want to engage in that will stimulate our minds. So, I look at, other countries like you might be mentioning in Africa. I think you mentioned Kenya, where people might not have that much leisure time to engage in those type of endeavors. But I think it's like the other brother said, it's a process. And there's pros and cons to both styles of life. Whereas though when you do live in a country where there's a lot of leisure time, then there's other issues like health issues and overweight and eating processed foods that that deteriorates our health as well. So it's a balancing act between the two. When I see that you engage yourself in a lot of physical activity to balance that out as well with stimulating your brain.
That's a great point. But Mr. Sandman, when I was at Sac State, there were a group of young men who came to me and said, "Hey, we want to work out with you." So I said, let's get it in. You know what I mean? Squad up. And one of the things, a young man, he was Afro-Latino, and he stated that me being at Sac State and being a Pan-Africanist helped him embrace his African heritage as a Latino man. But one of the things he stated was, he said, working out with you, I feel that I'm not only getting stronger, I feel that I'm also getting smarter. He said, I feel that when I'm in community with you, close proximity with you, you're working my body and my brain. And that's really what it's all about. Because as we know, people who are intellectually indolent are easy to manipulate. And that's not something that we want for our people. And we know, unfortunately, we tend to be manipulated to work against our own best interests. And so that's something we always have to be steadfast and vigilant in terms of pushing back from a myriad of sources, right? Ideologically, there are a number of ideologies that are not only adverse, antithetical to Black people, but particularly Black men. I mean, we got Black men here on the platform, so that's something to consider as well.
Hey, Dr. LeBoom, speaking on the idea of Christianity in the Black community, seeing as we have this, string of Christian nationalism going on, with the Trump. I mean, obviously it's been, undergirding America for a long time, but now we're seeing it, full frontal attack in a sense. Do you think that this will kind of make the masses of not the mass, I guess the majority of Black Christians rethink their religion, or do you think that they're more likely to be swept up in it, right? Because it's kind of like, will they be willing to overlook the blatant racism if it means that they can, how can I put it, be one with their brothers in Christ in a sense?
Right.
What do you think is the play, or how this will play out in your opinion?
Well, number one, I want to say that's a hell of a question. You jumping back in, you pushing me, right? um,
Yeah.
but I would want to hear from Brother Dubs and Mr. Sandman about this, get their perspective as well. And so I'm just going to provide an opinion. This is not a fact in any way, shape, or form. But one, I would say um, I don't think it's going to change their perspective on Christianity. As we know, the brainwashing is rather strong. Typically, what we find when Black people or any group of people who are Christian come in contact with a group of Christians that are promoting what they would consider as a radical or extremely bellicose form of Christianity, they would simply argue that their worldview or their perspective of Christianity or their particular denomination is the correct denomination of Christianity. This is why there are numerous denominations today. We're talking about Methodist, Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Catholic, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, etc. Right? That it really just it comes down to oftentimes there's some denominational beefs there. So, and when you talk to Christians with different denominations, they all think that their denomination, a particular perspective of Christianity, is the correct perspective of Christianity. So, I don't think it would lead to Black people looking at Christianity any difference, because if 244 years of enslavement followed by 100 years of Jim Crow, and of course now the new Jim Crow didn't change anything, I don't think dealing with a Christian nationalism would change anything either. The last point I would make about this, really put a bow on this point, is I'm seeing a number of videos in which Black preachers are promoting Christian nationalism. For example, the church I went to in the greater Orlando area, the pastor was promoting Christian nationalism. And it was really eerie because growing up in church, I grew up in church, I went to a Pentecostal church growing up, Church of God in Christ, Kojic. They always will promote Christian nationalism. It may not have been as radical as we hear today, but the pastor or the preacher, the deacon, the missionary would always aver that the solution to the world's problems was what? Christianity. Even though if you do a deeper dive into what many of these social political problems that we find in the world, it is due to what? Christian nationalism. So that's nothing new. If you are if you are in community with people who are churchgoers or parishioners, they are going to be promoting Christian nationalism because it's really just part of the ideology of the religion. Because we know Abrahamic faiths, particularly Islam, Christianity, are imperialistic in nature.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do have some, I guess, encouragement in a sense, because I do feel like maybe in this era, maybe because we just got the internet, but I do feel that I'm seeing a lot more Black atheists coming out. A lot. I think it's losing its grip on the younger generation. Kind of like what you said about just populations in general having more information, right? Because when you have more information and when you have more time, kind of, to what Mr. Sandman was saying, when you have more time, you can actually give more thought to it. And then, like I said, you may come to the conclusion that, hey, this does not hold up to scrutiny, the way I used to think it did in the past. So, we'll see. I do think that, I know a couple years back, atheism was the largest growing of the religions. Obviously, you have the religious, and atheism would be non-religion, atheism and not agnosticism.
But it's still considered a religious group, though. But that's rather ironic. But it is considered.
Yeah, it's a non-religious religious group.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Brother Dubs, what are your thoughts? And then, of course, we'll go to Mr. Sandman.
Just listening. I'm just listening.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I would say that we would probably be surprised that the majority of Americans or people in general just don't spend much time following up with, the latest developments in politics and things that are going on society wise. A lot of people are engaged with, um, frivolous behavior, whether it be, Pookie or Ray Ray running around in the streets, showing off the fake jewelry and the guns, or, the next kid, he might be just, playing video games or what have you, or the next kid, he might, be engaged with, running around chasing girls all night, I think, a lot of people are, keeping up with a lot of these developments. And even if they were, I don't believe a whole lot of people have the wherewithal to, try to anticipate what, the tea leaves are showing them in regards to, those developments. So I think the majority of people who just, it's the 10%. I think what's that one thing they used to say is, it's 80% never knew, 15% know something, and then only 5% know what's really going on. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what's going. I think that's the development that we're looking at right now, and to anticipate what, you know uh, how society is um, uh, maturing the public is hard to decipher or anticipate what's going to happen over the next, 10 to 15 years. I think people are still highly influenced uh, by, the broad majority of influences out in the world. So we'll just see, where social media takes it.
Muted. So do a brief pivot, because it's a little late here on the East Coast. Um, Diddy, should he have his? So his attorneys filed a motion today. They had a hearing in federal court for his uh, conviction to be vacated or his sentence to be greatly reduced. Do you think that his sentence should be vacated or his sentence reduced?
I did not follow the case as much as, especially, when the initial verdict came down. I was just, kind of like, it was just in the zeitgeist. So I just kind of paid attention to it like that. I think it's a tough one because I think you might have mentioned it before, where it's just like, personally, hold on a second. What's going on? Hold on, sit tight. Hold on a second.
No problem.
Go to somebody else.
I comment on it.
Okay, go right here. Go to Dubs.
I think he should be vacated. I'm gonna be honest, man,
Okay.
because I when I look at this case, man, I really don't. I think they was considering adults. I think he said that in his appeal. I think, yeah, something like, so. As far as I know about the case, man, I really don't see what he did that was like like he forced somebody against their will. He did to show the hotel video, but like other than that,
But he wasn't charged he wasn't charged with domestic violence.
that's true. So I really found it to be, I think it's an interesting one, but I really think that man should be vacated. He should be freed.
Okay. But the Sandman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Sean Puffy Combs personally,
Right.
but my gut feeling is that he's not, the most upstanding individual in the world. But in regards to the charges that are imposed against him, I don't think that the prosecutor has proven without a shadow of a doubt that he's guilty of what they're trying to charge him with. So, in that regards, if we're just going by the rule of law, then no, I mean, then yeah, you're right. Yeah, he should, have his charges reduced or vacated, because they just haven't proven that he broke any particular law, in my opinion, you know, that warrants the type of jail time that he's been given. But like I said before, the guy he's not a I don't think he's a good guy,
Right,
he's
right.
but he when they say bad boy, he's
For
really
life,
the
for
bad
life.
boy.
Remember, for life.
Yeah.
What do you say? He's like the cops
That's really
and
him.
feds come get me, right?
Yeah.
But the LMA, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember exactly because he was charged with, was it racketeering
He was
and
charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and one count of racketeering, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. The Mann Act, and we know the Mann Act
yeah,
was,
man,
of
yeah,
course,
that's a kind
created
of
to bring
yeah,
down Jack Johnson.
yeah, and I think kind of like almost kind of like what Mr. Sandman is saying, that you know he's probably not a good dude, but if you're going by just the law,
Mhm.
and the racketeering, because like I said, and to give, I guess the nuance to the sensitivity of a situation like this, where
Yeah,
you can have an abuser who can manipulate the situation so good that he blurs the line from what's right and what's wrong. You know what I'm saying?
but what's
And
consent and what's coercion?
he can blur the lines, and I'm just assuming that he, and that's just this assumption. I don't know the man. I wasn't there,
Right.
but he could, with his power, leverage his access to, get people to do what he wants them to do, and then there's just enough plausible deniability that, he can come off scot free. And, like I said, and obviously when that happens, you really can't prosecute that, right? So, to the fullest extent of the law, because like I said, as long as you can show text messages where the would-be victim appears to be, collaborating with him, then you can just say, look, she did this of her own free will. Whereas,
And
we've seen
they did have those text messages where she was,
exactly.
she provided, and they had numerous text messages where Cassidy talked about, I love doing this, I can't wait for the next freak off,
Yeah,
etc. Right? The prostitutes that were paid were, of course, men. They said that they were contacted by Cassie. She's the one who handled booking their flights, the hotel, and she's the one who paid them. They said all Diddy did was sit there and watch and record.
yeah, yeah. And so when you have, and like I said, this is just, I'm not saying one way or another, but I just know that you can have situations like this where the victim, they used to call it the Stockholm syndrome. I think they got a new name for it now, but you have stuff like that where you could, be pulled into a world where it's not obvious that, from the outside looking in, that this is an abusive or
Right.
manipulative situation.
I
So
would agree.
and I'm not saying this or this is what this is, but I'm saying that this occurs, and so it kind of sucks because at some point you can say, okay, I don't think this guy's on the up and up.
Right.
But if we have laws and the prosecutor can't make their case, then you got to let them go.
Right. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to Westonian, Garveyite, of course, Haiti here. Peace to all the original man in the chat. Hopefully, we can do a reading of the work of Dr. Amos Wilson. May peace be upon him. Absolutely. You're from Haiti, brother Sapase. Of course, definitely want to give all love to Haiti, the first Black Republic, right? Putting in the work and doing what no one other group of African people were able to do, and that's to defeat 3 European powers over the course of 13 years, right? The French, the British, the Spanish, and then the French again. We definitely want to give a shout out to, of course, brothers and sisters from Haiti. I believe I personally believe are the greatest group of African people on the planet Earth. So matter of fact, family, if you're watching, make sure you hit your subscribe and like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and make sure you be a blessing to the show. You can hit the super chat, Venmo, or of course Cash App at Lumumba Speaks. So I agree with you, brother LMA, but this is my position, and of course you all are welcome to push back. And Basoni and Garvey, you could tap in if you want. The link's in the description, the link is in the chat. It is my belief, and this is about a provocative position that and an evocative position. I'm quite sure it's going to elicit very strong emotion and reaction. Is that I believe Cassie was a willing participant, and that she did it because she engaged in the freak offs, the use of drugs, the partying, the drinking, because P. Diddy, Puffy, Sean, Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, Papa, whatever you want to call, he calls himself these days because he was rich. I believe if a man who had model looks, Sister Shy, what's going on? Appreciate you, sister. That if a man had model looks, I mean, this dude could have been, looked like he was cut from granite, right, and looked like a Hollywood actor. But if he worked at the grocery store or UPS, she wouldn't have went for any of it. That's my personal belief. As someone who's been out in the world, I know these are the type of things that take place. If you have money, people will do things they only don't do because they want access to what they believe you have.
Yeah.
And I would like to add though, if you look at the history of organized crime in this country, it's been going on for well over a century. That when the feds can't get nothing solid on you, they start doing this stuff called RICOs,
Mm,
where they say, well, we can't get you with nothing definite, so we'll just make up some BS to get you behind bars. So like we were saying before, I don't think Puff Daddy might not be guilty of this particular crime, but they've been on his behind for a long time. So there's probably a lot of stuff going on, behind the scenes that we don't know about.
mm,
And I'm not trying to, vilify the man or anything like that, but you know, there's regular crime, your regular Pookie and Ray Rays that like to rob liquor stores, and then there's
right.
another level of crime that goes on,
White collar. Yeah.
white collar crime that these people, engage in, and a lot of federal agents are keeping an eye on them, So I'm not going to say that the federal government is not um, is the good character in this either. You know what I mean?
Well,
But they
well,
couldn't. Hey,
well,
they couldn't find anything wrong with Scarface or what's his name, Al Capone. So what they do? They lock him up for tax evasion. You know what I mean? Even
right.
though they know he done murdered like 1,000 people. You know what I mean?
But brother Sam, I mean, what do you mean? This is the United States of America. We have the greatest and most just criminal justice system in the world.
No, well, I guess that's what they would want us to believe.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
anyone who
they
takes
probably
that
have the most
position,
money invested in it.
right? Anyone who takes that position, I tell them read two books. One, The New Jim Crow by Sister Michelle Alexander, former professor at the Ohio State University, and of course the law school there, and then of course The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. A great book written by two professors from Michigan. One, I believe, was at Eastern Michigan University. The other at Michigan State. The book is titled The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. Chapter one is titled Nothing Succeeds Like Failure. And they talk about how the criminal justice system is a multi-billion-dollar, of course, industry, and that preventing crime would actually be adverse to the benefit, right? If you actually prevent crime, you're going to actually, people are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that sounds like a good read as well.
Right,
I'm gonna check that
absolutely.
out.
So those are two books that I tell anyone. We want to talk about the criminal justice system. If you don't read these two books, I'm gonna smack the shit out of you, right?
Oh wow.
Because if you go
You
read this
two, you better
goddamn
commit
book, oh,
crimes.
right.
Just get them to
Right.
read the
So while you
book.
read the book, I'm gonna be behind bars, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but I say these are two books you have to read, and then come back to me, and then we can have a conversation. The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. Then, of course, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness by, of course, Michelle Alexander. If you all are unfamiliar with Michelle Alexander's criminal seminal text, the supposition or the main argument that she makes in her article is that there's been a concerted effort to criminalize African Americans, particularly coming out of the civil rights Black Power movement, but she argues going all the way back to, of course, once slavery ended, right? And the argument is that once you criminalize African Americans, particularly by making them a felon, you can then legally discriminate against them in the very manner that African Americans were discriminated against during the Jim Crow era. So now the argument is racial. They could say, well, we're not discriminating you because you're Black. We're discriminating against your monkey ass because you are a criminal. Right. So she says this is something that's taking place. And mind you, she wrote this book, even though her husband is a United States federal prosecutor. And she argues, and I would agree, that the criminal justice system is inherently racist at every level, local, state, and federal. And her husband disagreed with the argument she made in the book, but she provided substantial historical, a copious amount of historical references, case law, etc. One of the things she even cited was the fact that police officers, Supreme Court stated that police officers, detectives, whatever you want to call them, can knowingly and willingly make false claims to compel a person who's under arrest to make claims to incriminate themselves. Yes, by law, they can legally say, listen, we got a person in the other room, diamond you out. We got you on camera. We got you on camera in the library with Colonel Mustard with the candlestick. And then you say, okay, man, I did it. All of that is a lie. By law, they can do that. She talks about pre-contextual stops, to where police officers would just randomly stop a Black person and say, oh, why did you stop me? Oh, you changed lanes within 100 feet of an intersection. But how do you know I was within 100 feet? There's no marker on the street, right? So these pre-contextual stops. I've been a victim of pretextual stops, where they come up with just make up something and say, okay, this is why we put you over now. We're going to search your vehicle, so on and so forth. So these are some of the things she talks about, unfortunately, that play a role in, of course, the criminal justice system being inherently racist at every level, local, state, and federal. I'm going to shut up because I know I'm monopolizing the conversation, but I recall when I was in graduate school, and of course, as you all know, I have two masters. One of my masters in public administration, and I was focusing on, of course, criminal justice reform. Of course, that was like, the buzzword back then in the 2010s. And I had to read the Department of Justice report on the Baltimore Police Department. So the director of the MPA program, he's a white guy from South Carolina. He told me, he was like, look, I got the report for you, but I'm just going to tell you, I read it. He said that when you read this, it's going to piss you off. He told me, he said, when you read this report, it's going to piss you off. So what ended up taking place was I read the report, and there were all kinds of violations of Black people's civil rights. There was a situation in which a federal officer was doing a ride along with a Baltimore police officer. They see some brothers chilling on the corner, just, talking shit, popping, just chilling, saying, having a good old time. They're not breaking the law. And the sergeant radioed the patrolman and said, listen, you need to stop them and search them. And the guy said, well, I don't have any probable cause. And the sergeant told the patrolman, make up a probable cause. Make up a reason.
Yep.
These are the type of things that happen to Black people on a diurnal basis in this country.
Yep. Plus, there's like hidden signals that they can give each other, because if the actual his captain or his supervisor told him to do that, then he could be liable to be penalized for that, legally, for telling them to do something illegal. But there's signs and signals that they can give each other to let them know that, hey, you know what you need to do, but I'm not going to say this because this can incriminate me. And you can read the tea leaves if you want to move up in the system, as a police officer or what have you, or they might have their own free time, that they hang out with each other outside of when they're at work, where they can have these type of discussions as well, and come up with and formulate ideas and plans on how they want to operate moving forward. So, and then even if you come from a law enforcement family, there's unspoken rules that all those people engage in too. So yeah, man, it's unfortunate, and then yeah, it's like man, the black people have been, like you said, uh slavery is illegal unless you become
Yeah,
unless you go to prison.
unless it's
And
used
then
as
that,
punishment for a crime.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a great example of that we find, in the contemporary moment was, I think, last year, wildfires were, wildfires were wildfiring in California, and
Hmm.
what they had the prisoners, state prisoners, fighting wildfires for, if I remember correctly, $10 a day,
Mm.
putting their lives at risk. But the LMA,
And the twist on that with the firefighters is that they were able to fight fires as prisoners, but then when they were released, since they have that felony on their report card, when they tried to get a job as a firefighter,
they
they
couldn't
get
do it.
rejected. They get rejected
Mhm.
because they have a felony, but they went in prison getting, $1 a day, if that. They were able, saying they were able to fight fires then. So you
Mhm.
fight fires when you were in prison, but couldn't fight fires when you were free. And, kind of goes back to that same, you talk about the rich get richer and the poor get prison,
Yeah,
because you have people who are literally in prison making no money in modern day slavery, fighting to because those wildfires were really were really threatening the houses of millionaires. So you have people who are enslaved fighting for the property of rich people.
yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't know if anyone has ever seen the movie, um, "The Spook That Sat by the Door." Has anyone seen that movie or read the book?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, so I had the privilege of reading the book and then, of course, seeing the movie when I was an undergrad. And there's a scene where the brother who's acting like a Tom, but he took what he learned in the FBI, CIA, and he took it to the street brothers in Chicago and actually was forming a revolution. And then they spread this around the country. But there's a scene where there's a brother who he grew up with, went to high school with, even college, and he's on the police force. And he finds out that he's actually the one leading this revolutionary charge. It's a great movie. You got to watch it.
Okay.
And he said, man, just be real here. We're not protecting people. We're protecting property.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So something to, once again, consider. I'm going to actually bring up the book here. The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison: Ideology, Class, and Criminal Justice by Jeremy Ryman and Paul Layton. So great book. As you can see here, it's only about $6, $7, $8. And there's a 10th edition on Amazon. Don't want to give Amazon too much of a shout out. Don't want to give them on a free commercial, but definitely check the book out. The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. It really talks about what we're talking about. And one of the biggest ways that, the rich get richer is this concept of the plea deal, right? Most people don't take their cases to trial. And so as a result, they're able to really, bully people into taking plea deals that, of course, are not in their best interest. But of course, for the prosecutor, their job is just simply to ensure that they have a high conviction rate. So there's a lot, we did a 3-part series on combating the carceral state, the criminal justice system. We may do another series on the criminal justice system, but definitely want to make sure I heed the wisdom of Brother Wilsonian Garveyite. I'm going to look at doing a reading from, of course, Dr. G. Wilson. I'm sorry, Dr. Amos Wilson's book, Blueprint for Black Power. I think chapter 31 is a powerful chapter, one of the greatest chapters I think anyone should read. And he talks about in chapter 31 the crisis of Black leadership, right? And he talks about the 3 leadership classes: the cultural nationalists, the integrationalists, then of course the black conservatives. So I'm definitely going to set that up. Definitely want to give thanks to our brother Wilsonian Garveyite. So we're going to get ready to shut it down. So I'm going to give last words to brother LMA, brother Dubs, and then of course we're going to call it a night.
Yeah, great conversation. Glad you're back. It's way past my bedtime, but it's always good to talk to you, man.
Yes, sir. Brother Dubs.
I enjoyed this. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward for next time.
Absolutely. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Make sure you subscribe, follow the channel, Bequaline Network, and of course, Lumumba Speaks. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace.